So for 20 years, we've actually been investing in China in the venture capital industry. First with SoftBank China Venture Capital, and that was the time we did the Alibaba investment. And then there was a fund called Safe Partners that I helped create, and then a fund called Siyuan. So we came here, and you could tell that you were about to have a huge change in the venture capital industry in China. And I think that that was one of those moments where you could just sense what was going to happen. We call it the institutionalization of venture capital at that time. So we've had 39 IPOs in the last 14 years and about 25 companies that are worth over $1 billion. I hope in 5 years we still have 25 companies worth over $1 billion. The venture market tends to be somewhat merciless over time, so we will see. So in terms of the venture capital industry, over $100 billion was deployed in 2018. In 2005, it was $1 billion. So it's really interesting to understand that industry has gone up 100 times in terms of capital over a 13-year period. What's also interesting is 82% of all VC investments in the world now are in 2 countries, China and the United States. That is phenomenal when you think about how that's evolved over time. And I think that that's reflective of both the entrepreneurism that's innate in China, but it's also interesting to think about where that money came from for China. If you look from 1998 to 2018, and you look at what we call risk capital, Series A, seed capital, where there's technology risk in the company, 87% of the money that funded that in China came from overseas. It was not done in RMB. It was done in dollars. U.S. and China are inextricably linked now when it comes to invention and innovation. The combination of people, market, opportunity created this large sector. So if you're the top VC in China now, you're pretty much the peer of any of the top VCs in Silicon Valley. And so when we hear the politicians talk about decoupling, to me it's a ridiculous point of view. You can't decouple places where you've had so much work, so much innovation together, so much cooperation. I can't predict what your job will be, but I think we can predict some of the areas that it might be. This is what I'm using the Qiming companies to just look at how healthcare has evolved over the last 15 years. When we moved here in 2005, exactly one novel compound was approved in the Chinese drug market. One. It was a foreign licensed product that was brought in and went through the Chinese drug approval process. Last year there were approximately 300. What we did at Qiming is, if you look down here at TigerMed, so there was no real research capability in 2006 in China. And you had a very poor system for doing clinical trials. So a company, TigerMed, that a gentleman named Dr. Ye had left Roche to found, was really the first world-class institution in China conducting clinical trials. That company today is worth about $6 billion. So it's been phenomenally successful. But what it did is it allowed for the creation of a domestic innovation engine in pharmaceuticals. That capability needed to be there first. We have Jacob Bio, Zylab, which is a public company. On devices, if you look at where companies are today, Venus is a transcatheter heart valve. If you talk to the people at Medtronics, which is the world's largest device company, medical device company, they will tell you the Venus product was 2.5 to 3 years ahead of what they could develop. So in this area today, China's absolutely at the cutting edge of technology in the world. Pharmaceuticals, not yet. As Mr. Wang talked about, clearly in gene processing, China's the largest in the world. Pharmaceutical development, not quite yet. Devices, China is the largest in the world. And diagnostics, China's the equal of anything in the world. Services still has some work to get caught up on. 2.5% or less of GDP was spent on healthcare in 2005. Last year was about between 6.8 and 7.2%, depending upon what numbers you believe. Again, China's going to probably spend 12% of GDP on healthcare. But if you think about the difference from 7% to 12% in that period of time, it's a great opportunity. But literally across China, whether it's pharmaceutical, devices, services, that is an area that if you have a choice on careers and you have a choice on where to spend your time, that area will pay well for you for a very long time. So the things that we think about in terms of what some of the opportunities and challenges are. On opportunities, creation of trust, and I've mentioned that a few times. When I moved here, what I found was that the systems in China really were not trusted by most of the people in China. And we realized that with Alibaba. When Alibaba launched Taobao, it was very successful in destroying eBay. But Jack Ma and the team was quite unhappy 2 years later with the feedback from the customers. And what was happening were the pickups, deliveries, the entire services around buying a product online in China was quite poor. So what Alibaba did was say, if you're a courier and you're working with us, you have to pick up within a certain amount of time, deliver within a certain amount of time, wait for the customer to approve the product, and if they don't like it, take it back. And over 3 years, they were successful in that. So they created trust. I would not have imagined 15 years ago that the number of people in China would buy a product from someone they don't know, that they'd never seen, give them their credit card and financing information, and do that at the scale of what's happened in China. Same thing with electronic payments, both Tencent and Alibaba in that case. And so really extraordinary. But when you look for, again, when you look for a business opportunity, you look for a career opportunity, think about where can you create trust where it doesn't exist. There's another word for that. It's called a brand. But brand doesn't quite capture everything associated with trust in China. But so when you talk to a company, you look at an opportunity, you should really be thinking, is this an entity? Is it the consumer's trust? Is this an area that you can be part of helping build that trust? It's incredibly valuable. On challenges, jobs. Where will they come from? China's going to try to do something that no one's ever done before. You've taken 700 million people out of poverty. You still have a few hundred million people that need help. But where will the jobs come from to allow you to do that? Manufacturing jobs in the last 100 years have been the engine of creating a middle class. It created a middle class in Europe. It created the middle class in the United States. It's created the people who are in the middle class today in China. It's changing. And it's changing very, very quickly. So the thought process, we have not yet tried the experiment of creating middle classes in large populations like China, India on a service economy. This is something that's going to be very important and something that's going to be worth spending time on. But this to me is something that's a significant risk when we think about the development of these countries. The final comment I make is optimism will win. Okay? I don't know how many of you have ever worked on teams where you have some pessimists. It's really hard to get done. Really hard to get anything done when you're so concerned about what could go wrong. And I would say that when you simply look at the future is going to belong to those who are optimistic. The world today is much better than it was before. Over the last 15, 20 years. It's improved dramatically. And we can get very, very concerned about looking at everything that's wrong. But just remember, the future belongs to the optimist. Thank you.